You are fighting a silent, brutal civil war within yourself every single day. On one side stands your conscious self, the person you show the world, diligently suppressing impulses, masking true feelings, and pruning your personality to fit in. On the other side is everything you've locked away, a hidden army of rejected desires, forbidden emotions, and uncut passions. Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, gave this exiled army a name, the shadow. And here is the terrifying, liberating truth you must understand. In this inner conflict, the shadow always wins. It may not conquer your conscious mind, but it dictates your life from the depths, sabotaging your relationships, hijacking your reactions, and shaping a reality you never consciously chose. Your suppression is not creating peace. It is drafting the blueprint for your own defeat. This is the story of that inevitable victory, and how understanding it is your only path to true freedom. Carl Jung did not discover the shadow as a philosophical idea. He identified it as a psychological fact, an innate part of our architecture. From the moment we are born, we begin a lifelong process of sorting our natural instincts and emotions into two categories: acceptable and unacceptable. The acceptable traits form our persona, the polite mask for social survival. Everything else, our raw anger, our primal greed, our childish neediness, our flamboyant creativity, is cast into the dark basement of the unconscious. Jung revealed this is not a disposal, but a relocation. These disowned parts do not vanish. They coalesce into a secondary, autonomous personality, the shadow. It becomes the keeper of all you refuse to be, a hidden twin growing stronger on the very energy you use to ignore it. Your first act of suppression is the shadow's birthday. You believe you are in control because you successfully avoid certain thoughts and behaviors. This is the ego's grand illusion. Jung taught that what you repress does not dissipate. It gains a life of its own in the unconscious, operating with a will and an intelligence separate from your conscious intentions. The energy used to hold these traits down is immense, depleting your vitality for authentic living. Meanwhile, the shadow bides its time, gathering strength. It wins by default, because a significant portion of your psychic energy is permanently mobilized just to maintain the repression, like a nation spending its entire treasury on its border wall, while the interior of the country starves and decays. Your sense of control is a prison guard's boast, unaware the prisoner is already digging the tunnel that will collapse the entire cell block. How does a force locked in the basement win the war? Through projection, Jung's pivotal concept. Since you cannot tolerate certain qualities in yourself, your unconscious psyche performs a magical trick. It perceives them in other people. That colleague you instantly loathe for their arrogance, that friend whose neediness grates on you, that public figure whose flaws ignite your fury. They are often mirrors. Your shadow is projecting your own disowned traits onto the outside world, creating a cast of characters who perfectly embody what you hate in yourself. This is how the shadow wins. It tricks you into fighting your inner battles on external battlefields. You exhaust yourself, criticizing, blaming, and trying to change others, all the while reinforcing the very split within you that gives the shadow its power. The enemy you see is a phantom, a reflection, and the real war remains untouched. Consider your most heartfelt conscious goals, to be loving, successful, or disciplined. Now watch as an unseen hand scuttles them. You snap at a loved one, procrastinate on a crucial project, or indulge a habit you swore to quit. This is the shadow's victory in real time. Jung explained that the repressed content does not lie dormant. It seeks expression, and if denied a conscious outlet, it will erupt autonomously. The kindness you prize is undermined by a burst of cruelty you don't understand. The discipline you cultivate is wrecked by a spell of laziness that feels alien. These aren't mere mistakes. They are tactical strikes from your unconscious. Your conscious mind is the CEO announcing a corporate vision, while the shadow is the workforce, silently unionizing to enact its own agenda. The company's public goals will never be met because the real power operates on a different set of rules entirely. Jung understood that the psyche and soma are one. The civil war against your shadow is not fought only in the mind. It is inscribed upon the body. Chronic tension, mysterious pain, sudden illnesses, and relentless fatigue are often the body's conscription into this conflict. The stress of perpetually suppressing a part of your own being creates a state of systemic inflammation, a biological alarm. Your body becomes the battlefield where the shadow's repressed energy manifests as somatic rebellion. You may treat the symptom, the back pain, or the headache, but the cause remains untouched. The shadow wins by transferring the conflict to a domain where you are less likely to recognize its source, turning your own physiology into its ally and your conscious mind into a confused medic, trying to treat wounds while ignoring the ongoing battle. Every trait you exile to the shadow reduces the territory of your conscious life. Jung warned that a person who suppresses their anger loses the capacity for righteous conviction. One who banishes their sensuality forfeits deep intimacy. Who you refuse to be dictates who you can become. The shadow wins by enforcing a state of psychological poverty, where you live in a small, well-lit room of acceptable traits, while the vast mansion of your full potential remains locked and darkened. Your world narrows, because your personality narrows. Opportunities that require a boldness you've suppressed will pass you by. Relationships that demand a vulnerability you've outlawed will fail to launch. The victory is quiet, a life of manageable dullness, a slow starvation of the soul where you are safe. Perhaps, but utterly unfulfilled, because the keys to your fulfillment are in the shadow's possession. Even the relentless pursuit of positivity becomes a shadow weapon. Jung observed that those who forcibly repress so-called negative emotions, like sadness or anger, into the shadow do not become enlightened. They become brittle and secretly hostile. The positive persona becomes a tyrannical mask, demanding constant vigilance. The shadow, meanwhile, fills with a concentrated reservoir of denied darkness. This is why the perpetually cheerful person can sometimes harbor a shocking, hidden cruelty, or why the spiritual bypasser often collapses into a profound, inexplicable depression. The shadow wins by ensuring the mask cannot ever be removed, turning your very pursuit of light into a factory that manufactures its opposite in the dark. You become a walking dichotomy, a public inspiration and a private reservoir of the very bitterness you preach against. Jung identified a haunting pattern. The repressed material in the shadow is doomed to be lived out as fate. This is the compulsion to repeat. You may vow to never end up like a critical parent, yet find yourself delivering the same withering comments. You may flee a dysfunctional relationship only to soon inhabit another with the same painful dynamics. This is not coincidence. It is the shadow engineer in your reality, unable to be integrated consciously. The disowned content seeks expression through unconscious reenactment. You become an actor in a play written by your hidden self, mistaking your own psychic script for destiny. The shadow wins by making you a prisoner of repetition, convincing you that you are making free choices while it quietly stages the same painful drama over and over, with you as the unwitting star. Jung's theory holds a stunning twist. The shadow contains not only our darkness, but also our buried brilliance, our golden shadow. This is the sublime potential we suppressed, perhaps due to shame, fear of outshining others, or a childhood message that we were too much. Your uncultivated creativity, your latent leadership, your untapped intelligence, all may reside there. When you feel a pang of awe or envy towards someone, you are often seeing your own golden shadow projected. The shadow wins here by depriving you of your own majesty, keeping you in a state of admiring others for the gifts you yourself possess but dare not claim. Your life becomes smaller, not because of a dark trait, but because of a glorious one you were too afraid to embody. The theft of your light is its most elegant victory. Your strongest emotional reactions are not random, they are precise coordinates. Jung taught that what triggers you, what sparks disproportionate anger, hurt, or envy, is a direct signal from the shadow. That person who embodies a trait you despise has hooked a disowned part of yourself. The intensity of your reaction is proportional to the strength of your repression. The shadow wins by using these triggers to control your emotional state, but it also, paradoxically, reveals its hiding place. Each trigger is a flare shot up from the unconscious, saying, "Here I am." Your rage at a perceived injustice points to your own suppressed fight for self-respect. Your envy of another's freedom highlights your own caged spirit. The shadow operates the trigger, but conscious awareness can read the map it provides, turning the mechanism of your defeat into a guide for your reclamation. Imagine your conscious ego as a sentry on a vast, dark border. Its sole duty is to watch for any sign of the repressed shadow material trying to cross into conscious territory. This is a duty that never ends, requiring constant vigilance and immense psychic energy. Jung saw this as a primary source of existential fatigue. You are tired not from living, but from the endless work of not living fully. The shadow wins by turning you into your own jailer, depleting your vitality in a permanent state of defensive alertness. The creativity, joy, and spontaneity that could fuel your life are diverted to fund the border patrol. The sense of being drained, of having no energy for your passions, is not a personal failing. It is the successful drainage of your resources by the very parts of you you're trying to keep imprisoned. In its most dramatic victory, the shadow can temporarily take the helm. Jung called this state possession. It occurs when repressed energy builds to a critical mass and erupts, overwhelming the conscious personality. In a fit of rage, a compulsive act, or a period of self-destructive behavior, you become a vessel for the shadow. Afterwards, you might say, I wasn't myself. Jung would argue you were exactly yourself, but a part you had refused to acknowledge. The shadow wins by demonstrating its ultimate power, the ability to usurp your identity and act through you. These episodes are not a loss of self, but the violent emergence of the exiled self, proving that your conscious authority is conditional and can be revoked by the forces you deny. The puppet believes it is free, until the hidden hand finally moves. The ultimate aim of the psyche, according to Jung, is individuation, the process of becoming a whole, integrated individual. Suppressing the shadow directly sabotages this sacred project. You cannot become whole by amputating parts of yourself. The journey toward your unique potential grinds to a halt. Jung saw this as a profound spiritual failure, a refusal of the call to psychological maturity. The shadow wins by stalling your evolution, keeping you in a state of childish fragmentation where your persona is a shallow stand-in for authentic character. Your growth is stunted not by a lack of opportunity, but by an internal veto on the raw material necessary for growth. You remain a two-dimensional sketch, while your destiny as a fully realized, three-dimensional being waits indefinitely, held hostage in the darkness. Your relationships are never just between two people. There is always a third party, the combined shadow of both individuals. Jung understood that we unconsciously seek partners who express the qualities we have repressed, a phenomenon called projective identification. You marry your own disowned strength or neediness. The shadow wins by designing unions that feel destined, yet are fundamentally rooted in mutual incompleteness. Conflicts often arise when you clash with the very traits you were initially attracted to, because they are, in fact, yours to integrate. The relationship becomes a frustrating hall of mirrors, reflecting back the parts of yourself you cannot face until you withdraw those projections. True intimacy is impossible. You are not loving a person. You are wrestling with a phantom of your own creation, orchestrated by the shadow. Jung proposed that the body is the shadow's primary storage unit. Emotions and memories, too painful for the conscious mind to hold, are deposited into the somatic unconscious. A stiff neck might hold unexpressed defiance. A weak stomach may carry unprocessed anxiety. Chronic shoulder pain could bear the weight of a burdensome responsibility you cannot consciously admit to resenting. The shadow wins by encoding its content in a language your thinking mind cannot easily decipher. You become alienated from your own flesh, treating it as a mechanical object that malfunctions, rather than a symbolic text expressing your inner truth. Healing requires a translation, a listening to the body's symptoms as messages from the exiled self. Your aches and pains are the shadow's manifestos, written in the ink of biology. A profound creative block is often the shadow's successful siege on your conscious mind. Jung viewed creativity as a dialogue between the ego and the unconscious, a river flowing from the depths. When you suppress major parts of yourself, you dam this river. The shadow, holding your authentic voice, your raw imagery, and your taboo ideas, simply withholds the flow. The blank page, the silent instrument, the inert canvas, they stand as monuments to your inner division. You may try to force creativity from the ego alone, resulting in work that is sterile and derivative. True innovation requires the shadow's participation. The block is its leverage, a negotiation tactic from the depths. It will only release the vital, unconventional material when you are willing to acknowledge its existence and grant it a conscious seat at the table of your expression. Jung's insight extends beyond the individual to the collective. A society, like a person, has a shadow. The qualities a culture collectively denies, its violence, its greed, its xenophobia, are repressed into the cultural unconscious. They do not disappear. They erupt in mass movements, in scapegoating, in periods of historical frenzy and destruction. What a nation professes to be in its highest ideals is often precisely what it secretly fears. It is not. The cultural shadow wins when citizens project their own disowned darkness onto marginalized groups or enemy nations, fueling cycles of hatred and conflict. Jung warned that, until a culture confronts its own darkness consciously, it is doomed to act it out catastrophically on the world stage, mistaking an inner civil war for an external one. In the realm of spirituality, the shadow achieves a supreme camouflage. The bypass. Jung warned against using spiritual ideals to avoid psychological work. The person who claims only love and light while seething with unacknowledged judgment, or who seeks transcendence to escape their humanity, is not enlightened. They are deeply divided. Their spirituality becomes a sophisticated persona, a holy mask. The shadow, meanwhile, operates untouched in the background, often leaking out as spiritual arrogance, hidden hypocrisy, or a disdain for ordinary life. It wins by co-opting the language of awakening to fortify the prison of repression. Any spiritual path that does not include a sincere descent into one's own darkness is, in Jung's view, a detour away from wholeness, and a direct service to the shadow's agenda of remaining unseen. The shadow does not have to win through domination. Jung's solution was not to let the shadow run wild, but to end the civil war through a truce of consciousness. Victory for the conscious self is not achieved by stronger suppression, but by turning the light of awareness onto the darkness. This means catching your projections, admitting this trait that infuriates me in another is within me too. It involves examining your triggers and compulsive behaviors as messages. This conscious acknowledgement is the beginning of integration. The shadow's power is in its autonomy, its separateness. When you consciously claim a disowned piece of yourself, you drain its autonomous, sabotaging energy and convert it into a usable part of your personality. The war ends not with a surrender, but with a negotiation where both sides are recognized as part of a single, sovereign nation of the self. To negociate, you need a channel of communication. Jung developed a method for this active imagination. It is a deliberate, waking dialogue with the contents of the unconscious. You do not analyze the shadow from a distance. You engage Italiano. In a quiet state, you might invite that inner critic, that hidden rage, or that lost creative child to speak, and you listen, perhaps through journaling or art. This is not giving the shadow the reins. It is granting it a voice in the parliament of your psyche. Through this practice, you discovered the shadow's logic, its fears, and its positive intent. What you labeled as pure laziness may be a desperate call for rest. What you called malice may be a distorted cry for respect. This diplomatic engagement is how you begin the transfer of power from unconscious autonomy to conscious choice. Jung's final word is that the goal is never to eliminate the shadow. That is the ego's fantasy of total control, and it is impossible. The goal is integration. This means bringing the shadow into a respectful, ongoing relationship with your conscious life. The integrated anger becomes the capacity for healthy boundaries. The integrated selfishness transforms into valid self-care. The integrated darkness lends depth, substance, and realism to your character. You become larger, more resilient, and paradoxically, more compassionate. The shadow, once your hidden enemy, becomes a source of vitality and wisdom. Its victory is transformed. Instead of winning by sabotaging you from the dark, it contributes to your wholeness in the light. You haven't destroyed the shadow. You have naturalized its citizens, and your inner nation is stronger for it. The moment you stop fighting your shadow, you experience the paradox of its ultimate victory. It wins by being seen, heard, and integrated. Your defeat in the Civil War is your liberation as a person. The energy spent on sentry duty is freed for creativity and love. The compulsion to project fades, and your relationships become cleaner, more authentic. The symptoms and sabotages lose their purpose. In accepting that the shadow always wins, you choose the only form of victory possible. You join it. You realize that wholeness, not purity, is the aim. Jung's legacy is this shocking, redemptive truth. You are not meant to triumph over your darkness. You are meant to unite with it. In that union, the war ends, and for the first time, You are genuinely, undividedly free. The chilling truth of Carl Jung's shadow is not a sentence, but an invitation. Its relentless victories, the sabotages, the projections, the exhausting inner war, are all signals you have mistaken part of yourself for an enemy. The shadow does not win to destroy you. It wins to be recognized. It persists until you turn from adversary to archaeologist of your own soul, until you dare to meet what you have feared. This integration is not a moral pass for darkness, but a strategic alliance for wholeness. When you cease the fight, you reclaim the vast energy bound in that conflict. Your darkness, once a saboteur, becomes a counselor. Your fullness, not your flawlessness, becomes your power. The war ends when you realize the shadow was never your opponent, but a disinherited part of your kingdom, awaiting its rightful place at your table.